Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It is about 12:01, so I think we will go ahead and get started. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty. Okay, here we go. Great. I see some people are still logging in, so I just wanted to welcome everybody. I see lots of new faces here. This topic is a little bit different today, as we're going to focus on communication. And I just want to thank Deb Farron for bringing this idea to us because we all communicate every single day, whether it's work or personal lives or wherever. So being able to communicate effectively is extremely important. And Deb is going to give us lots of insight on that today. I have a couple quick announcements before I turn it over to Deb. The first one is we just finished our last step challenge in Personify Health for the year. We wrapped that up on Monday, and the final numbers are in. And I feel like some of these winners are on this call today. So I want to congratulate everybody who participated in the step challenge called Path to Fulfillment. But the first place team, especially the Financial Force, second place CMC Walk Jog Run, and then third place team was CRMH Mother Baby. So congratulations to everybody who competed in that challenge, and especially those who took those top three spots. It's quite an accomplishment. Okay. I want to also invite you to our January webinar. That's going to happen on Thursday, January the 15th. And we're going to focus in January on financial wellness. Again, that's not something that we focus on a whole lot, but there are lots of resources that the Principal offers. You're familiar with Principal because they manage our retirement account, but you may not know that they also offer lots of other resources for you to save money, create a budget and stick with it, save for college, buy a home. So there's lots of resources that Principal can offer. So I'm pleased that we have a Principal retirement advisor coming to offer that presentation on January 15th. I will send you more details at the end of this presentation when I share with you your Personify Health voucher code. That said, you'll hear Deb mention lots of resources today, and I'll also be sharing those with you at the conclusion of our webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Deb Farron to you. She's probably a familiar name and face to many of you. Deb is extremely passionate about communication and has been a public speaking trainer for over 10 years. Deb is also an integral part of the medical ethics department, the stress first aid project manager, and she's the trainer facilitator for Schwartz rounds. So at this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Deb. Deb, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Can you guys all hear me? Okay. Julie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, fabulous. Well, let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. I am so excited to be here as well. And isn't it always interesting that I can't quite find the window I want when I want it, but we will get there. Here we go. All right. Can everyone see the screen now?
I don't see it quite yet. Can everybody see it except for me?
And I can't see the chat, so that.
Yeah, there's
Julie, I just see a white
people are
screen.
mentioning that they can't see the screen.
Okay.
Can't see anything.
Let me try a different way here. All right. How about now?
Yes, ma'am. We got it.
Great. All right. Well, we love technology, right? So thank you for introducing me, Julie, and for being here. I'm real excited to be here. So you might wonder, how in the world did I become passionate about this topic? Oh, of course, being in medical ethics, that's a pillar of communication, is part of ethics. So that's it. But it goes back a little further than that. back in my high school days. Now, I'm not going to tell you when that is, but because obviously I kind of date back to the dark ages. But in my high school days, I was told, not volunteered, but told that I would compete in public speaking. Well, as most of you will gather, I was shaking in my shoes over that, but I did it and found that I enjoyed it. But that didn't last very long because, of course, life comes around and we travel down those roads of raising children and all those wonderful things. And at some time later in that course, I was assisting one of the doctors I worked for with his PowerPoint. And I thought, how can I feel like he does when he's presenting and therefore enhance that for folks? And then I became a member of Toastmasters. And of course, there lots and lots of practice. And from there, you might see this other group of folks over here. I came to coach and train others in public speaking techniques. That's where this passion really started because there was so much involved with the way the young doctors worked. And I'll tell you a little story where it really clicked. I was working with a young doctor, much like one of these young ladies in this picture, and she could not look at people in the audience, could not look at people in the eye when she talked. She would look at her shoes, literally at her shoes. Well, the day came when she was also told, you must present to a room of 400 people. And while looking at her shoes, she said, Deb, what am I going to do? I don't know how to do this. I said, the first thing is you have to look me in the eye. But we've worked on it for 5 or 6 sessions, and she presented to the group of 400. And what she found was that she found her spark. And she showed an echo image up on that screen that was twice as tall as we were. And she found the spark in that what she saw in that echo image, she could use to save that patient's life. She not only looked at that group of people, but she began to be able to look people in the eye, really be able to communicate with them as she worked on all these techniques. And I noticed the same thing with the other young doctors I was working with, that they became more confident. They were able to talk better with their colleagues, with their administrative personnel, with the people they answered to, but most of all with their patients. They were more confident and they could communicate better. And I became convinced that working with speaking techniques. Now, I know you guys out there are going, no, 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 I don't want to do public speaking. And you don't. But you could use these techniques to really enhance your communication, which in turn boosts your confidence and your well being. Now, we know that communication is the foundation of all meaningful relationships. It really is. And research tells us that better communication improves our confidence, our connection, and our connection with other people. That's a pillar of well being. We need that. We see that on Personify, and we need that. So, better communication enhances that connection. And research proves that too. And one of the things that Julie will send to you later on are some articles from the American Psychological Association and the Journal of Interprofessional Education and Practice. And she'll drop those for you so that you can read that research as well. And they all lead to being able to communicate better. So today, the three topics that I'm going to share with you are things that we use in public speaking that help us when we're in that room in front of 400 people, but they also will help in interpersonal communication with colleagues, bosses, family, all of these things. It really is all about the audience. All that powerful communication happens when you speak to the audience's needs, not what you want to speak about. It's all about them. It really, truly is all about them. So we'll go into a few techniques to help us enhance our communication with keeping that in mind, that it's all about them. Now, in public speaking, we say, know your audience, adapt your message, and engage and respond. So, in that sense, if I were speaking to a group of gardeners or a group of car mechanics or a group of young doctors, I would want to know that audience, a little bit about them, and I would gear my presentation to them, things that matter to them. And we can do that too in interpersonal communication. I would adapt that message and then I would engage with that audience. I would ask them for feedback, ask them for questions. And today, certainly, if you have questions, then raise your hand. I feel fine with Julie interrupting and asking. I can't see all of you right now, but I'm happy to answer questions as we go through. So engage and respond. And we use those same things as we're talking to our colleagues. Now, I want to share a little something else with you. I came across a podcast I was listening to that Dr. Allison Brooks from Harvard was on. Now, Dr. Brooks teaches communication at Harvard, and she shared with us that the biggest reason that we don't do the best in our conversations is that we're self centered, we're self focused. But that's not our fault. We're wired that way. It's a matter of self preservation, survival that makes us that way. So instead of approaching our communications with what's in it for me and starting on that wrong foot, when we go into that conversation with taking perspective of the other person and being able to understand what they want, then we are better able to communicate, not to guess what they want, but these techniques will help us know what the other people in that conversation can be wanting, not looking at our shoes and trying to guess. So, some tips that help us are to prep some topics and to ask questions. Now, let's talk a little bit about prepping the topics. If you think about what the other person in the conversation might be interested in for even as much as 30 seconds, there's research that shows that that conversation will be more meaningful and deeper, even if you don't use topics that you prepped. So let me think about this. If I were going to a meeting and I might know the people in that meeting, I might think, oh, they have children or grandchildren, or the child they have, he's in baseball. I can ask them about that and then follow the questions. How's Johnny doing in baseball today? Of course, they're going to tell you. You can go further with that. Now, what's the best thing he likes about baseball? Or what position does he like to play? You can do this with anything, any interest that you know they have. 30 seconds is all it takes. Even if you don't use those topics, it will translate to the person you're speaking with that you're truly interested in what they have to say. Some scripts you can take away with you today and be able to use. Everyone's looking forward to something in the next few months. They might be wanting to travel. Or again, there's activities, children, grandchildren. How is, whatever topic, the project going? Now, lastly, I'm going to share a little something with you that Dr. Brooks actually shared in that podcast. She said, you won't believe this. My sister was nervous about talking with my parents. She hadn't seen my parents for a little while, had been so involved with her life, and she was actually nervous. So she jumped on Chat GPT and said, what are topics that someone who's 70 years old, living in New York with 9 grandchildren, would want me to ask them? So you can even cheat a little bit and use that as well. But I think the key takeaway there is, what would they want me to ask them? Again, it's all about the audience. The benefits of this: definitely reduce your stress about communication. Let me speak to that stress just a little bit. I used to be very stressed when I would go to a cocktail party. Now, we should have fun there, right? But I'd want to get back in the shadows a little bit and not talk to people. So there was a little bit of stress. But once I began thinking about some topics that these people I didn't know might want to talk about and asking them questions, my ability to mingle and not be stressed at that function really increased. You'll form a deeper connection with the people that you know. And then, of course, like at that cocktail party, establish connection with people you don't know. So, in our objectives, we've hit audience centered speaking, right? Now you know exactly what that is and how you can practice it. Let's move on to organized thinking. Now, it matters. Have you guys ever been in a conversation that looks a lot like this picture? Someone is speaking, but it goes around and up and down, and you're not quite sure exactly what they're trying to tell you. I've been there, and yes, I've done that, where people look at me and go, what are you saying? So it does matter to organize your thinking, and it's very simple to do. Of course, it's easy to understand. I love this easy to remember. I remember this a lot if I'm talking with my kids or grandkids. They will remember 40 more percent, 40 more percent of the conversation if you're organized when you speak to them. The great thing is it's easy for you to remember, and it increases your credibility and your connection, which in turn increases your well being. So, how do we organize our thinking? Well, chronological is easy. It happened in January, and then this happened in June, and then in December. That's easy to follow. A story's also easy to follow. Now, I know you guys are all full of stories, and those are great as well, easy to follow. Spatial helps if you're building a house, renting a new apartment. Maybe you're adding on to your department here at Carillion, and you want to walk someone through. Spatial's great. The following questions goes right back to our audience-centered speaking when we ask questions and the person responds, and we can follow that logically. Now, listed the power of 3 last because that's my favorite, and I also think it's the easiest thing to remember. And we use that a lot in speaking. We'll say 3 topics in your opening, expand upon those, and then retell those 3 topics in your closing. And it's easy to remember. But we can do that too in our interpersonal communication. I usually say here 2 to 3 points because 3, maybe a little formal, for speaking, but to prep 2 or 3 points. Now, how can we practice this? Another funny story. You can practice this on any topic. And several years ago, I was actually getting ready to compete in the Toastmasters program in impromptu speaking. Needless to say, I was a little nervous and wanted to practice. So I had all of my family, all of my friends approach me with random topics, and I would have to speak for 2 minutes on that topic. It was funny because a friend went by me in the hallway and she said, fire truck. Another one went by me in the break room and said, peanut butter. And another one got a little more complicated and said, Deb, you are a flower. Why? What flower are you? So I had to think very quickly, 2 to 3 points about each of those topics and expand upon that for 2 minutes. Now you can do that too. Maybe a little more practical, even things that you think people will want to speak about. So practice those. Do we have anybody in the audience who would like to practice that today? We can take a break and practice it for 2 minutes. Any brave volunteers? I'll pause a minute to give you a chance to overcome that fear and jump forward.
So it looks like Eva Shelton has volunteered, or I see her hand was raised.
I see that. And I will gladly let Eve practice with organized thinking. Now, Eve, you can unmute yourself, and I am going to give you a simple seasonal topic to talk in an organized way. So you're going to come up with 2 to 3 points on that and speak for 2 minutes. Miss Eve Shelton, what is your favorite Christmas tradition? Your favorite Christmas tradition?
Thank you very much, Deb, for the opportunity to speak. Christmas has a very important meaning to us. I always say we don't forget Christ is the reason for the season. And I'm meeting more and more of our Carillion patients who are coming back to wishing me a blessed Christmas, a Merry Christmas, and I'm very happy about that. Advent begins 4 weeks prior to Christmas, and one of my favorite tradition is to building a wreath with 4 candles, to light every Sunday a candle, like a Christmas Advent calendar for children. I will light the first candle, and next Sunday the next, and now we just had our pink candle for Laudate and Gaudiamus Sunday, and it was very interesting to see how we really prepare more and more for Christmas. Another big Christmas traditions are our cookies. This would be one of the second points. We also start weeks prior because we want to have these cookies become very soft. We want to collect these cookies in metal cans and let them moisture over the weeks so that on Christmas Eve they will just dissolve on our tongue whenever we stick them in our mouth. We have a special cookie that's called Vanillekipferl. It's a very small little finger, a crescent-shaped piece of hazelnut dough with vanilla sugar all around, and you stick it in your mouth and you think you ate a bite of ice cream. I would think about a third part of Christmas is, of course, singing in front of a tree. Our trees are just decorated on the 24th and then stay for 12 days until uh, baptism of the Lord. So when the Christmas tree is being put up, we are already starting to sing songs just automatically. Songs like Silent Night, Holy Night, or there are songs about the snow coming down, about Mary going through a thorn bush wall that will carry beautiful roses for Christmas. All these things will keep us calm and let peace come in to our lives. And it is just wonderful then to see how many traditions came from hundreds and hundreds of years back. Christmas is this time where we will get all ready that Christ came here for Easter time to die for us. So Christmas is the time where we could start to jubilate, to enjoy all your times, to have a beautiful time during Mardi Gras, and then prepare for fasting time. Christmas is the time where the snow comes and the tree brings us life into the house by showing us that there is green still out in there when outside there is no green anymore. So I wish everybody a wonderful and Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. Back to you, Deb.
Thank you very much, Miss Eve Shelton. Now, that was a great example of organized thinking. Eve actually spoke for a little over 3 minutes, and it was effortless. It was effortless. And in my memory, now I'm the person that Eve is speaking to, I have remembered at least three things from her speech, and I am dying to try some of those melt in your mouth cookies. But that's a great example of how you can practice that and become more comfortable and enhance. She also gave a lot of things if she were talking with me or another person that we could continue that conversation about and deepen that meaning and learn about each other. Now we have covered two of our objectives: audience-centered speaking, organized thinking. Next, we have a little thing called filler words. Now, I'm sure some of you may know what filler words are. They're, well, a little annoying, honestly, but things like, so, like, basically. Filler words are anything that comes into our conversation or our presentation that don't have any meaning. They don't have anything to contribute. And I know we've all heard them out on the street. The reporter says to someone, and it's full of ums. We've heard maybe our children say, well, we like to go down to like the mall, and we like to, that's full of filler words. Now, something that used to happen to me a lot is the nervous laughter. And that can happen in these instances we talked about where you may not know the person that you are getting ready to talk with. And you start to talk and that little nervousness bubbles up. So that's what these filler words are. Now, it's human nature. We're wired to do it because what's happening is our brain and our vocalization are catching up with each other. What's also happening is we may be nervous and those filler words come in. Now, we also call these crutch words. So if you remember, if you see a person coming towards you with a crutch, you realize he or she has injured themselves somehow. They have broken their foot or injured their leg. It's similar to that when we are speaking. If we have too many ums, likes, so's, people view us as leaning on those. Maybe we're not so credible, they might start to think. Or they might think we're not confident or we're nervous. And yes, they're very distracting. So we want to try to eliminate as many filler words as we can so that we can communicate clearly and use all of our words effectively. So we know what they are and why we shouldn't do them. How do we eliminate them? Well, you have already taken the first step right here today. You are now aware that there are filler words that exist in all of our conversations. And now the magic ingredient is pauses. Using a pause. When you feel a filler word coming on, just pause. Now, I know when you first start doing that, it's going to feel like forever when you pause, but it's really not. And the reason for that is that your audience, person you're speaking with, group of 5, 10, 200, whoever you're speaking with, they need a little time to absorb what you just said. So pauses help do that. And they're like a nice little seasoning in something that we're cooking. It adds to it. And we can, this is the takeaway of how to get the filler words eliminated, is to record yourself. Like Eve spoke with us a few minutes ago, she could record herself and see how many filler words were in there, which, by the way, I heard not a single one. So kudos and thank you, Eve. We're going to hear them. I hear them in myself when I record myself. So that's a way to do it. And you can practice much like we just practiced organized thinking. Now, shameless plug here, of course, if you have something coming up, you can come to the Toastmasters group for Carillion Clinic. We meet every month, twice a month. Contact me, I'll tell you how, and practice that. You can practice at home in your mirror by recording yourself. And what we will do is eliminate filler words. So let me just give you a little bit of a contrast here. So my boss comes to me and says, Deb, how's that stress first aid project going? The project is like, oh well, it is on track. We're doing well. Hey, listen again. The project is on track. We're ahead of schedule. The team has exceeded expectations. So what I did there was simply count to 2. And it gave me a little time to pause and to add emphasis. And hopefully it gave my boss a little time to absorb everything I was saying and realize what a great team that I have working on that project. So that's a little contrast to show you. To remember, no ums, right? And lastly, strategically using pauses really increases your credibility and great confidence. And that equals what? Enhanced well-being. One last thing. I have a question. What could possibly be as important as speaking? Well, Larry King and Simon Sinek and many other motivational speakers, podcasters, book authors, researchers all agree. Listening. Listening is as important as speaking. And it goes back to each of those things that we just discussed, particularly the audience-centered speaking, listening to that person talking to you, because then that gives you more things you can talk about and deepen that connection with them. So here are a quick few do's. Now, the first couple of things are pretty obvious. We don't want to talk over others or think out loud. But the most difficult thing for me when I first started working on my listening skills was the third one. I was always wanting to formulate what I wanted to say before that person finished speaking to me. And it goes down with the last one of anticipating. I was always anticipating what they had to say. But once I stopped doing that, and it is hard and takes practice, I began to realize that I was learning a lot of things, much like Larry King said in his quote there. I was learning so much more from the people around me. So these are a lot of don't do's. Now, the do's, we're not going to read all these things right now. That's a lot, but you'll see them when Julie sends you the slides. Common sense things like really looking interested, leaning forward. And at the bottom, there's our asking questions. That enhances your ability to connect with others. I believe we have hit all of our objectives today. and you're all ready to go practice, right? Audience-centered speaking, organized thinking, eliminating those filler words, and above all, your listening skills. Now, I'd like to conclude with this contribution from Brene Brown. I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, and when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. And that, my friends, is what all of these public speaking techniques that you can use in your own life really bring you to, is that sustenance and strength, connection, the confidence that you have once you are communicating better with people, and that strength really sustains that relationship between you and that person or those people and your own well-being. Now, I have a few references, and you're welcome to look all of these up. Just so you know, I didn't pull all of that out of the thin air. Many, many people do agree with this. And remember, you can always practice here. You can research all of these things. You can listen to podcasts, and Carillion Clinic has communication classes as well that you can further your knowledge in this, because believe me, this is only scratching the surface, and you can learn the wide world full. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And if you have questions, I am open to answering whatever you may have.
Deb, thank you so much. That was wonderful, enlightening, and I want to thank Eve also. I don't know if you all noticed, but when Eve was asked to speak, there was a pause and before she started speaking, and I almost thought there was something wrong with her microphone. But that was all part of Eve doing exactly what Deb had said, and take that pause to that time to organize your thoughts and to pause. So excellent job, Eve. Excellent job, Deb. I don't see questions. I do see a wonderful comment. I love this. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We need to listen more than we speak. And I love that, Jennifer Gardner. Thank you for sharing that. I do remember, I have to tell this story because it has stuck with me ever since I was in graduate school, but I was giving a presentation in front of my class. And of course, extremely nervous. It was an epidemiology class. And I'm so old that you talked about being old in the beginning. We used those overhead projectors, and I kept putting the slides on upside down on the projector. That's how nervous I was. But at the end, I remember the professor said, "You're going to be a great presenter, but just don't wear any rings." And I had been standing there twisting my rings on my fingers the entire time and had no idea that I was doing it. So since then, that's something that I really am in tune with. But this is, like you said, it's useful information, not just for giving presentations in front of people, but we're in so many meetings now, especially Teams meetings, which I think makes communication even more difficult because you can't really read the room when everybody's just looking at you from a screen. So this, again, Deb, so helpful. And everybody, I'll be happy to share all this information with you. I'll share Deb's slides and some wonderful resources. And I do see one question coming in. Lindsay wants to know, what would you do in a situation when you have important information to convey in a group meeting, but your intentional pauses turn into others jumping in before your thought is completed? It's a great question.
That is a fantastic question. And indeed, I have a whole presentation on how to handle that and other behaviors in meetings. But to answer this specific, most of the time, your intentional pauses won't be long enough for someone to jump in. And there is a little skill as you start working those pauses in to your speaking, you will learn the right amount of time for that pause so that it's enough time for folks to absorb what you said, but not quite enough for them to jump in. So that's the first thing, is you'll learn the timing of those pauses. Now, when people do jump in and you don't intend for them to, I will follow this methodology. I'll go ahead and let them say the comment that they needed to say, because it might really be something I need. It might be feedback or something that I need to do. And I kind of set you might notice I keep a timer around. So I'll kind of set a timer, particularly if I'm on an agenda, and I'll think, okay, I'll let them, of course, finish that thought, but not go on longer than a couple of minutes. And a technique to do there is they'll take a breath too. Eventually, they'll take a breath, and you can thank you. Thank you for that comment, and then snap right back on into what was on your agenda. Another thing you can say, if this is a person who's a habitual interrupter and you don't want your meeting to go off track, again, when they take that breath, you can say, thank you. I hear your excitement with that, but let's circle back to that at the end of the meeting. Those are about 3 good things, and I hope that helps you. Did that answer your question, Lindsay?
Wonderful. Deb, I don't see any more questions. I do see lots of people just chiming in about what a great class this was. Thanking you. One more question, Annette wants to know, how do you gracefully bow out of a conversation with a long-winded patient?
Yes, that, a lot of that, Annette, is going to depend on the situation that you're in. And you can always, again, when they take that deep breath to interrupt, you can say, thank you. I'm really glad that we had time to talk about this. And you can use any number of items. I have to run to a meeting. I have another call coming in. Those can give you some graceful outs. A lot of us use those already, I'm sure. But in general, I use the respect tone and, thank you for that. I appreciate that conversation. However, we'll need to come back to that another time, or something to that nature. But always, I find, if I keep in my mind what is best for that person and keep that respectful communication, then it enables me to say something that is graceful and respectful and enables constant good dialogue. Did that answer your question, Annette? Okay.
Another question says, you mentioned that Carillion has more communication classes. Where could we find them?
In Workday. Workday, one that comes to my mind, and that I'm getting ready to take some of them shortly, is called Crucial Conversations. And I get a lot of emails from the Crucial Conversations folks, and it really, really helps you in all kinds of difficult and challenging communications, and it will really further this education. So that's the first one that comes to mind. Carillion did have a whole series of communication classes in Workday. I think they still do have them. They have some de-escalation classes and all of those things. But look in Workday, and if you have trouble with that, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll get on a Teams and help you find them.
Great. I don't see any more questions, and this is perfect timing. Just again, lots of praise for you, Deb. Thank you so much. It is 12:45. Again, I'll follow up. See, you heard my there. I'm trying hard. I'm going to pause more, but I will follow up with all of you and share your voucher code and some additional resources that Deb shared. So thank you for being here. I wish you all a very happy holiday, and hope that whatever it is that you need during this holiday season, you'll find the time to do that for yourself, whether it's family time or just some time for yourself, doing what you enjoy. I just wish you all the very, very best, and look forward to seeing you again in January on the 15th for our financial wellness webinar. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.